Thank you.
Charlonda Buckman, Miss Charlonda Buckman, representing Detroit, President Detroit Parent Network. We're moving right along. I'm going to ask the panelists to please be conscious of the time and your questions. A few more presenters, and then want to hear from the audience. Ms. Buckman.
Hi, thank you, Reverend, for the invitation. I want to thank all of you and welcome you to Detroit, French pronunciation of Detroit. You know, one of the things that let me just start with this. How many of you guys are parents on the panel?
Parents.
Just a show of hand, parents. Absolutely. And how many of you parents, grandparents, great-grandparents, how many of you have actually struggled with the question of where to send your child to school based on the hopes and dreams you have for them?
Absolutely.
So that is the perspective that I'm going to talk from today. So Detroit Parent Network has been around since 2002, and one of the reasons we exist is because when there were education fights across the city, there was somebody always speaking for the teachers. Even the custodians had representation, but there was no one authentically speaking on behalf of children. And we felt like, who is best to do that than their parent? And so this organization was founded on a set of values that recognizes that parents are the child's first teacher, recognizes that parents want the very best for their children, and barring mental health and substance abuse issues, with support they can help solve their own problems. And so as I've done this work, and I've been in this role for 13 years as of May 15th, I can't believe it, have been part of every education conversation across this city. And I can tell you that with all the work we've done serving 25,000 parents across this city, there is still a universal disrespect towards parents in our community, and parents many times are viewed as problems, not as partners. There are lots of examples of where parents have engaged, and where you see high-performance schools, many times you're going to see that there is a high level of parent engagement and respect. So I want to move from that and talk a little bit about our organization from the lens of parents and talking about the education landscape. One of the things that we do is we help support parents in actually choosing schools for their children. There's a core set of programs that we offer, which includes parenting classes, all the basics of parent leadership training, advocacy training, all those other kinds of things that we think are essential in having a better, if you had a better parent, you have a better student, they're going to have better academic gains. But one of the things that we're challenged with every single day is this education landscape. So I want to talk a little bit about that. So one, you've heard many of the issues that people have raised from us actually having a false choice landscape. When you can't get to a school, it's not a choice. And if you think about it, choice works really, really well. We've actually always had choice before we had this myriad of providers across the city. For the very active parent, a proactive parent is always going to choose, even if that choice before we had all these providers was across 8 Mile, was in another community, was private or parochial or things like that. And so when you talk about choice in this landscape, it's not really real for our parents because of the barriers that you have already heard. We have a landscape where school improvement is just based on test scores. It does not include some of the things that we think are important in terms of children being able to weigh in on how their schools are doing and what their mindsets are, and parents being able to weigh in that scenario. We have an instability of leadership. Thank God, as Reverend just mentioned, and I'm very proud of the school board we just elected. We are still now in the process of moving from calling our superintendent interim to having stability in that role. And so we've had a lot of instability in that particular role, and so we have to settle there. There's a lack of coordination. You heard about all the authorizers. You heard about the for-profit charter management companies. We have a number of issues in terms of parents even knowing where to go when they have a complaint or a problem, because there is no accountability to our parents in many cases across these systems. The other thing that we have to navigate when you talk about parents choosing schools is that the high concentration of poverty. You have just the fragile state of families, and I think you coined it well when you talked about tying this to voting rights, to the Flint water crisis. And one of the things that I wanted to lift up is we have an administration in Lansing that continues to put forth policies that are harmful for children, and the one that resonates with me is when we actually eliminated parents from receiving the welfare support, which put families in a state of chaos. They had to be off in 5 years, not starting from today, but from 5 years before. So all of a sudden you had thousands of families across the city destabilized. And what that looked like in our school system is kids were changing schools every single week. So I want to talk a little bit about the role that we've actually played, because we are not the traditional parent organization. We have intentionally put ourselves in gaps in trying to close those gaps, and so we're not architects of this education landscape, where we certainly try to navigate it. And so on the issue of high school dropouts, we intentionally put ourselves in that space and helping parents understand what the new options were at Cody and Osborne. On the issue of evaluating schools, we recruited 75 of our members to actually play a role in helping to go in to give parents real data on why they would choose a school or not, what they thought the strengths were. On the issue of Teach for America, there was a lot of conversation about these teachers lacking the cultural context and those kinds of things. So we took them out door knocking with us in those communities to build relationship with those families where they would be teaching. On this recent issue of school closures, and I know my time is up, but I'm going to skip to that. We immediately got with our parents, collected 1,000 surveys across this community in 4 days, and were able to share data back to our governor saying this is wrong, it has to stop. You have lots of parents who are angry, but one of the things that stuck with me out of the data that we actually collected is 70% of our parents said that they still trust Detroit Public Schools Community District with their children beyond any other system, especially what the state was having to offer. And so, with that, I just want to say in our city, we have a revival that's happening. We believe as a parent organization that this revival will not be sustained if you don't continue to invest in and lift up parent voices, especially around this issue of education.
Thank you, Sherlonda. Questions? Alice?
Thank you so much. I have a couple questions. How large is your parent group? Have you been successful in recruiting parents, and who funds you?
Absolutely. So we have funding that comes through foundations. We have contracts across multiple school districts. The Skillman Foundation, the Kresge Foundation, the Kellogg Foundation, so private foundations that are champions for children in this community. We are also a membership organization, so our membership is $10 and 10 volunteer hours, so that every parent is invested, even if you're just $5 or $10 in. Our greatest resource are our volunteers who are trained in many of our curriculums to actually deliver programs, but they also are tremendous when it comes to issues that we engage, organize, and advocate around, because they are the ones who went out and said, let's get real-time data on what parents are thinking, feeling, believing about these school closures, and let's fight. And so one of the things that came out of that is the M-STEP campaign, which is stepping out of M-STEP. We are saying to all parents now, let's stop giving the state the tools to close our schools. We don't have to take that test. And so for us, we're flooding our community with that, saying that you have the power. The U.S. Supreme Court has recognized parents as being the primary person to make decisions on behalf of their children, and so we need to exercise that. That's the type of role that our parent organization plays in this community.
Thank you. Robin?
Do you have members in your association? You said it's member-based.
Yes.
That are charter school parents as well as public school parents?
Absolutely.
And how is that working?
So our network is made up of, we support what parents choose. So if you choose traditional public schools, public charter schools, private parochial schools, or homeschooling, we support what parents choose. And so we have a strong homeschool group. We have parents who have children across multiple systems because they're trying to make choices based on what's best for their children. But we hear the same things that you guys have heard around, you know, I made this choice to go to this charter school, but they didn't have any support in place for my child with special needs. So yes, we have parents across the spectrum.
And then I didn't hear, what's the membership base?
So we serve 25,000 parents a year across this community. Many of them are members of the organization, and they actually engage and contribute through their volunteer hours.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sherlonda. Appreciate you. And also, Sherlonda, if you want to send us a synopsis. Ivy Bailey, President, Detroit Federation of Teachers.
Good evening.
Evening.
Thank you for your service from the National NAACP group and our local group. I'm sitting here and I do have some thoughts that I put down on paper, and I'm gonna go there, but I think I'm gonna end up going off script because I think I have to talk as a teacher. So right now I'm talking as a union president. So let me begin by saying that charter schools have their place in American education, but what has happened here in Michigan is really a travesty. It is not what charter schools were intended to be. Charter schools were intended to be incubators of fresh, innovative ideas. They were not meant to supplant or to compete with traditional public schools. Things definitely haven't worked out that way. Everyone here should know that Al Shanker, who was a president of AFT, actually supported charter schools. He started a charter school. Across the nation, loosely written laws favoring charter school operators, not students, have resulted in rampant fraud, waste, and mismanagement, not to mention discrimination in admissions policies to keep students with special needs out, and also poor academic standards. It's our obligation as a society to provide all families with access to great neighborhood public schools. This must be a viable choice for every child in America. That's why I fully support the NAACP's board for a call on a moratorium on charter school expansion. The number of charter schools has exploded without necessary transparency and accountability measures. We need to pause, step back, and study what's going on with charter schools. And I would like to say we need to start including teachers and support staff in some of the conversations surrounding charter schools and what's going on in our schools in America. The NAACP, the oldest civil rights group, and Black Lives Matter, one of the newest, both have proposed moratoriums because of what's been happening with this charter school movement. So let's look at what's happened here in Michigan. The spread of unaccountable, low-performing, for-profit charter schools is a hot mess. It's been created by Education Secretary Betsy DeVos. For 25 years, Betsy DeVos has been the chief charter lobbyist here in Michigan, giving political contributions to lawmakers to destabilize and defund public schools in favor of unaccountable charters that are mirrored in mismanagement, corruption, cronyism, and low student performance. 80% of Michigan's charters are for-profit. Virtually anyone can open a charter school in Michigan. That's practically no accountability. Something Betsy DeVos made sure of. According to the Detroit Free Press investigation, 75% of all schools in the state perform better than charters. Nearly half of Michigan's charter schools rank in the bottom half of America's schools, and charters lag 84% behind state averages in math and 80% in reading. I want to move away from this a little bit and say that 90% of the kids in America attend our public schools. Public schools are places where we prepare our students to become great citizens and to do great things in our nation. Here in Detroit, we've been up under emergency management for over, I think, since 1999. And as a teacher and now as a union leader, it is very disheartening to see what's happening to our children. There are so many things, and Rep. Sherry hit on some of them. It's like we're creating a prisoner pipeline, the pipeline to prison. We're creating a whole lack of confidence for our children. I don't know what people think children feel when it's always something negative around their school system. And when you talk about charter schools, and just recently with the closing of the schools, why is it that only for Detroit that a law was made that you can close our schools? What type of message are we sending to our children? But also, what type of message are we sending to our teachers who are supposed to be professionals? Our teachers, our support staff who stay here in the city of Detroit and they work with our children despite everything that has happened to them, despite the debt that has been stacked against them. They remain here, and we continue to belittle them and undermine them. They are not the enemy. They are, to me, they are the heroes, because they have remained here despite everything that has been thrown at them. And they have stuck with it, and they are here, and they definitely support this moratorium, and they definitely appreciate everything that the NAACP is doing at this point, because we feel finally somebody is looking at what is happening to us, and finally somebody may listen to our voice. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bailey. There are questions for Ivy Bailey? Questions or comments? Thank you, Ivy. If we can get that in
Yeah,
written
I went
form,
all off script, but-
we appreciate it. No, you was on script. Thank you very much. I'm going to call two young men, students, Amari Harris, from Renaissance High School, and Virgil Mason. They're going to present together.
Identify who you
Do
are.
that to Dale Hunter.
Yeah.
That copy.
Yeah, well, they got them both, so we don't know which one to do it.
Hurry up and get a report.
Thank you for allowing us this chance to speak.
Okay, before they present, I just want to say a word about who they are.
Can you give it to him now?
Amari Harris is a 11th grader at Renaissance High School. He is active member of the Mosaic Youth Theater. He's part of 482 Forward Youth Organizing Collective and the 482 Forward Northeast Action Team. And then Virgil Mason is a 12th grader at Chandler Park Academy High School. He is also a member of the Total Life Christian Ministries, the 482 Forward Youth Organizing Collective, and the 482 Forward Northeast Action Team. We want to thank these young men for coming up today. Go ahead, gentlemen, and state your name, which one you are. for
Yes,
the panelists.
I'm Amari, and
I'm Virgil Mason.
before we start, there's just a lot of these things that we have that we're going to say. Most of them have been said. I'll say them.
Come on.
Is it? Okay. Now, when we say them, we want you to see it from a different perspective, from our perspective, from the student's perspective. So, the charter system in Detroit allows for charters to open without much regulation from Detroiters themselves, and because of this, a lot of charter schools open. And during the surplus of charters opening, there was also a decrease in Detroit residents, and so because of this, DPS lost a lot of its students and a lot of its resources, and this led to what I like to call a kind of monopoly game, where it's between DPS versus charters, and it's just students caught in the middle, And this is the main cause of most of the negative effects that come from both charters and just really Detroit schools in general. So I go to Renaissance High School, the #1 school in Detroit, and I've dealt with several of these issues, not having teachers, not having resources, just different things like that. Last year, my 10th grade year, I went the first few weeks without an English teacher at all. And also, the same year, last year, my entire second semester, I walked in one day in second semester, the beginning of second semester, and my Spanish teacher just wasn't there. I was in class Spanish 3, and she just wasn't there, and she never came back. And because of the way the system is, they couldn't find anybody to fill that position, and so they had to, not only change my class from Spanish 3 to Humanities, they had to change the entire standard of Renaissance. It used to be that you needed 4 years of foreign language in order to graduate from Renaissance, but they had to change the entire standard from 4 years to 2 years because they couldn't find enough foreign language teachers. So,
My name is Virgil Mason. Let me speak a little louder. My name is Virgil Mason. I go to a charter school now, but I would like to share a story that I experienced. Me and my sister went to a well-known charter school. However, throughout the summer break, the school closed down, and I found out on social media in July, but my mother didn't get the letter until a month before it was supposed to schedule to start. We had troubles getting my sister's transcripts, her whole 9th grade year's transcripts, because she was about to be a 12th grader at a new school, but they said that she has to repeat the 9th grade over again and she was not scheduled to graduate that year. She had to graduate the next following year. She got totally discouraged because of that. And not only that, I had troubles finding my MEET scores because it was a school that I wanted to go to that requires my MEET score, which is another charter school that I wanted to go to. We tried to look everywhere to find the transcripts. However, since the school was closed, we could not find it. So we had to trace all the way back to an elementary school, which is a total different school from the high school and the middle school. And we found my sister's transcripts there. But my MEET scores are still missing, and I couldn't go to the school that I wanted to go to because I was already in another school at that time.
Just want to point out now that these issues are mainly resulting from the chaos, between the disconnection between DPS and the charter schools and the various amount of authorizers that there are in the city. And just that there are authorizers, to close schools, but there's no one to regulate the amount of closing and opening schools.
I also want to state that my mother found out that they had no right to deny my MEET scores in order to get inside the school, and I was very upset about that. But we, 4 to 4 has not been called yet for a moratorium, on charters, but we have spent the past years fighting to have one authorizer that is locally elected by us Detroiters over our charters and our DPS CD schools. And we think that the current situation, having over 12 dozen authorizers open up and closing schools without correlating with each other, with very little accountability to Detroiters, is a system that is designed to fail any type of school, whether it's charter or DPS. We can't even think about opening up a new school until we have a stronger system that can support our families.
I want to thank you, gentlemen. Let's give these young men a hand. Virgil and Amari, we appreciate you all. It's not easy to come up here and to speak publicly in front of this panel and to be in front of you all. But this is our future, so we appreciate you young brothers coming up, young men on the way up, and we appreciate that. Do any of the panelists have questions? Robin?
Reverend, I just want to thank you again for coming up. I was just talking to my colleague here and saying we haven't heard from any students. So thank you so very much for coming up and continue to talk to, your fellow students about this situation here. What's important is that when you have authorizers, and I'm just learning this system here, but it's very important that we participate as soon as we can, when we turn 18, participate in voting, right? Because of the managers and the whole system and the system that they have turned here in Michigan, right? Where the governor has too much authority, right, in our local communities. So I would encourage you all to continue to talk to young people, because we're here listening, but we need to hear what you need in the school system. So thank you very much for your leadership.
Thank you, young man. Any other question? Adora?
Yes, thank you. Let me also join Robin in saying how proud we are to be here and to hear you. Quite frankly, you are our reason for being here. You are our reason for searching so hard. I want you to know, just keep right on moving toward your goal. That's all you need to do. We are going to come together and get this right. Now, the one thing we understand from what you have said to us, we don't have a choice. We now have to prioritize and make you number one. When we understand the necessity of doing that and stop playing these silly games with the people we know have no business in office, and that is from Washington, D.C. to the state and to the locals. And the reason we allow them to be there is because we have decided that our vote doesn't count. And now we have learned that was the biggest mistake we ever made. Don't you make that mistake. Please tell all of your friends that you now know from coming to visit with people that you don't know, that there are people out here who love you, who believe in you, and who know you gonna get this right.
Thank you.
Thank you
I have one question.
for those questions.
I have a question. Look,
Oh, you have a question?
I have a real question. Thank you,
Ms.
Joe.
Huffman.
Everybody talks about you being the future, but you are now.
That's
And you indicated that you wanted one governing entity to issue charters. So what are you guys doing about that? Are you taking any concrete action, or you working with any groups to make it happen, other than just wish for it?
Yeah, we're currently we are a part of the 4824 Youth Collaborative and the 4824 Northeast Action Team. We're working very closely with 4824 as well as other students, teachers.
Can you say what that is? Because they're from out of the city. You may not know what that is.
You want to say about that? Or?
Take it away, man.
424 is we are a. I'm sorry.
It's 482, right?
Yes, 482. All of the
482 forward.
Yes, all of the zip codes in Detroit start with the numbers 482.
Okay.
So we are 482 forward. We are a parent, student, and educational organizing group in Detroit. And for a while now, we've been working towards a lot of educational things that we'd like. And one of those things a while ago was the we called it the DEC, and it was we wanted someone to overwatch all of these schools so that there wouldn't just be mass openings and closings of schools. So we're still working towards that now, though.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. We appreciate you again. And if you want to submit something to us in writing, please do that as well. Thank you very much. Is Iris Taylor here? Let's give them another hand. Thank you very much. Is Iris Taylor in the house yet? Oh, okay, come on. Iris Taylor, president of the Detroit Board of Education, the Detroit Public Schools. What is it called now? Detroit Community School District? Okay, whatever. Okay, I'm president of the Detroit Education System. Come on, right here, right over here, Iris, right here.
Is this the new election?
She just had some attention done to her feet. We know how it is when your feet is not working like they're supposed to. Let's give her a hand for coming down them steps and being here today. Thank you, Iris. We appreciate you. Thank you very much. The newly elected board in Detroit.
Yeah, newly elected board, right.
Thank you, and I humbly accepted this invitation to attend here tonight. I apologize that I was somewhat delayed. Competing schedules prevented me from being here on time. But I thank you for this invitation because this is a crucial time in the city of Detroit for public education. Public education is critically important to the progress of our community because it provides equal opportunities for all children and universal access to a free education. By doing so, public education evens the playing field that helps a diverse population prepare for college and a career and to follow their dreams and their aspirations. Our goal is to provide exemplary education to all DPSCD students in a global competitive market so that all students succeed in DPCD is recognized as coming from a superior school district that instills a thirst for knowledge and maximizes potentials of all students. Students first. We value maximizing classroom resources and decision-making that benefits the total well-being of students. Excellence, the pursuit and continual pursuit in defining excellence. We value consistent standards in the operations and the classrooms that yield relentless pursuit of outstanding performance. Service. We value customer service and community engagement that is student-centered, responsive, and satisfying. Respect. We value an inclusion environment in which all perspectives and voices are important. We are not against options or choices, but we understand that a large number of our population only has public education to turn to. And it is our belief that we should not only be here, but we should be here exemplary, and that we should have the support of our legislators, we should have the support of our community, we should have support of all of our civic leaders that enable us to be successful in public education. We are passionate about public education and equipping students for successful futures. That is why we wanted to serve as board members. While we know we have challenges in Detroit, as most metropolitan areas have challenges, and it is our intent to continue this pursuit of excellence while dealing with our challenges. We know we have schools that don't perform at the levels we desire them to be, but by aggressive process improvement and a committed community surrounding us to be successful, we will begin that endeavor to bring us to the definition of excellence.
Thank you, Iris Taylor. We appreciate it. Are there any questions from the panelists to Ms. Taylor?
Well, congratulations. I heard about this election. They've taken away elected boards in New York. The mayor is in control. I believe that our community should elect his office. And my prayer is that you will show the world, especially metropolitan areas, that elected board members can perform to make sure that public education is not free and cheap. I love that interim superintendent when she made it against free and cheap, that it's free and it's excellent in its quality to deliver for the children. Congratulations on taking on such a job as not paid. I'm sure that you'll have some sleepless nights, because our community, as the legislator said, is torn apart, and you have a job to bring it together so people can really have choices, as the young lady who has brought this parent group together. You all are on a good road.
Thank you, Hazel Dukes. Scott Estes.
Yeah, I have something a little direct in reference to these 14 entities that are making decisions around these charter schools and the authorizers. Do you have a plan in consolidating that and bringing it together where there's just one decision-making body?
That's really not a board of education ability to do that. It really has to come somewhere from the legislative body.
So the state runs everything here?
That comes through the state.
I'm sorry, I'm not
Wait,
from here, so I don't know, so that's why I'm asking.
No, you're fine, Scott. And I would hope, Sherry is still here, Sherry Gay-Dunyogo, if you could kind of speak to that and maybe a response to, yeah, go ahead.
A number of the universities here, most of the universities that don't have elected bodies, entities, they've been appointed by the governor. Many of them are the charter authorized.
So the governor has all the power?
Yes.
I get it, I'm sorry. I get it now. I'm a quick learner.
Thank you, Sherry. Sherry don't need no microphone. We appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you, Iris. Let's give her a hand. We appreciate it. Can someone assist Iris back down those steps, please? Thank you very much. We're going to call now for Clark Durant, who is the founder of the Cornerstone Charter Schools of Michigan. Clark Durant. Let's give our sign language coordinators up here a hand. They've been doing a fine job. Thank you very much. We appreciate you. Mr. Durant.
Thank you, Reverend.
know, like they say in class, we all ought to stand up and turn around 3 times and shake a little bit. But
That's okay.
First of all, it's an honor. I'm grateful to Reverend Anthony asking me to come this evening. As I've been listening to all of this, I've been trying to, in my other days, I was a lawyer, and I'm always, as an advocate, trying to figure out how do you frame the case in the best way for your client. And I've been thinking of the enormous job you have and the enormous opportunity that you have, and how do you frame it in a way that broadens the conversation. I think because of your moral authority that you are given this chance to speak broadly to the country. But if it is, when I got the initial email and saw, and I was glad to hear that you mentioned there was a press conference today to change it a little bit, but when I saw that this was about a moratorium on charters, and while there was deference paid to a number of families who do choose charters, to the public mind, it wasn't an open, truly full discussion about what choice and quality, I'm glad you keep saying that, and quality are about. When I was asked to serve on the Coalition for the Future of All Detroit School Children, I think Detroit did a very good thing. When I was asked also to be the co-chair of the academic subcommittee, and it was a wonderful experience because it allowed me to meet with principals at Detroit Public Schools, it allowed me to meet with principals in charter schools, and frankly, I even went and talked to some of the Catholic school principals. Because I'm trying to figure out how do you really create a framework that allows every child to be able to be successful. And the wisdom of our co-chairs on our coalition was that they really did try to listen broadly to different points of view, to try to fashion what really could work, what could really work. And I know you're late in the hearings that you've had, and I admire you for doing this. I've been on these kinds of panels, and I know when you don't get paid and you got to put the time in because you want it right. It's an enormous personal commitment, so I thank you for that, because that's a wonderful gift, probably the greatest gift you're giving. But Scott, you asked the question, if you moved aside the charter schools, and it's been said a number of times, there are good charter schools and there are bad charter schools. There are good Detroit public schools and there are schools that aren't working so well. I would say we have to look at this and say, how do you create, now I'm going to be counterintuitive here, how do you create more options? How do you create more options? It's very telling that when the mayor came to see me about supporting the Detroit Education Commission, which I was not too willing to be supportive because the language that came out of the Senate bill was tilted, frankly, against charters. And when Mike came to see me and said, Clark, I'm a Republican if you haven't guessed, and he said that I need you to be on this. And I said, well, Mike, if you'll make this a level playing field, I'll come out and support it. I'll stand with you. But we have to communicate, we're not about systems. We have to stop saying we're about protecting systems. It's about giving kids opportunities and maximizing those opportunities. So I would say to you, there was a very interesting talk that Michael Dell gave to a packed house at the Economic Club of Detroit in the fall last year. And Michael made the point about how dramatically the world is changing. How dramatically every system is changing because of technology and a lot of other things. And he said the future won't wait, doesn't wait. We can go through all the platitudes about what we're for and helping kids and whatever, but if we're not getting relevant, competency-based education, our kids are going to fall behind. It's that simple. And whether they come to a Cornerstone school, a Detroit public school, a charter school, unless we can change the way this wonderful thing of developing human capital, that's really what this is about, for every child, we're gonna be sitting here We can all have dinner together in 5 years or 10 years, and we may be struggling with the same things. So I would encourage you to truly step back and think boldly, because you're being given an opportunity to speak with a moral voice to the whole country. And don't think of it as we're just going to try to protect the system. You have the ability to do that. And I'm here to publicly say that whether it's in DPS, whether it's in charters, whether, quite frankly, in some of the parochial schools that have been committed to this city for over 100 years, great things are happening. And the men and women who deliver that product day in and day out need to be supported and encouraged. But I think the answer is a little bit counterintuitive about more opportunity. It tells you a lot when you can have, one of the things the mayor said to me, when 27,000 children every morning get up and leave the city to go to school. 35,000 children decide not to go to the main system. And the main system is the largest, and it has 44,000. There is such an interesting dynamic going on, and you have an opportunity to take advantage of really thinking boldly, and don't go with the conventional stuff. And I think the country will listen to you. I think the country will listen to you. I did write out my stuff, so I have copies if you want it. It touches on a lot of other things.
We'd like for the copies.
But I want to be respectful of everybody's time.
Thank you. Alice, and then Derek.
Thank you. I don't know if that was inspiring or not, but I enjoyed it. Would you, you're saying don't go with the conventional stuff, and we start from the premise of Brown v. Board, quality education for all, equity and measurable objectives so that no child is disadvantaged with a public education. And so if we take your premise that we need more opportunity, and you start from where we have come from since 1954 to have quality education for our children, how do you reconcile that? Because as you go for innovation and experimentation and all these other configurations, every child is subject to that particular institution and not to some standards that we have grown accustomed to. It's not about the system. It's about certificated teachers who have gone through and gotten themselves qualified. It's about a curriculum that we can see and understand. It's about a public school board that we can hold accountable. So tell me how your opportunity concept, more opportunity, can be reconciled with that.
That's a great question, and it will be very hard to answer in 30 seconds, but let me try two things. It's been a lot of discussion about elected boards. I totally support it as a part of the coalition, the election of the Detroit School Board, okay? But I will tell you that in some instances, it is an advantage that charter schools can go and find people to serve on their boards that bring money, ideas, value, relationships, for jobs, for other kinds of things for their students, and these individuals could never get elected to anything. But we have individuals who are CFOs of major Fortune 500 companies. We have other people who will get involved to help these kids come to work for their companies. They're not going to stand for an election, but they want to help. And they'll serve and bring excellence in governance standards that are important. I'm not saying it's the only option. I'm saying it's one of the options that gets overlooked. Now, I'm going to touch on something that I know runs counter to the grain, maybe of a lot of people in this room. But I always say, if you want to help people, I always say, let's see what rich people are doing. Because if rich people are doing it and putting real money in, there may be something there that every child ought to be able to take advantage of. So if you go to a number of the, I'm sorry?
No, I was listening to you. So
Go right ahead. Go ahead.
If you go to some of the high-end schools in this metropolitan community, where children of the city have full scholarships, where they have kids from all over the Metroplex coming, if you look at their teachers, not all of them are certified. You know what they're good at? They're good at their subject matter. They know their subject matter. And by the way, if they didn't, I want to tell you, every parent, rich, poor, in the middle, is an advocate. And if they're upset by the quality of what's happening in that classroom for their child, trust me, they're going to be damn mad. And it applies whether you're rich, poor, or in the middle. But those schools recognize, I want to get somebody off somebody's engineering staff. I want to get somebody who's written a great novel. I want to get Ken Burns to come and teach me about the Civil War. So you want to go and find, what you want to hold yourself accountable to if you're running a school is quality. Quality. And then accountable outcomes. We're all there. But I think if you're open to seeing this variety of possibilities, the whole business world where we want our kids to be able to go, those who aren't going to be artists or other areas, but those who go into business, they're going to find enterprises that change on a dime. That change on a dime because they have to meet the needs well of their customers. Ask Jeff Bezos the changes that Amazon has had to go through so that everybody in this room can take advantage of getting something when they want it, at the time they want it, and at the price they want it. But there's something to be learned in the way we deliver public education that we can steal, if you will, as any good idea from the way some of these other high-performing organizations operate.
Derek Johnson.
I really enjoy to hear you talk. I mean, it's like, it's pleasant.
Yeah.
How many charter schools are in Bloomfield Hills?
I don't know the number, but we can find out.
What was the
It's
question?
probably not as many.
There are none.
What was the question?
There are
Derek?
none.
Okay.
We didn't hear the question, Derek.
I asked how many schools are in Bloomfield Hills. He asked
How many charter schools are in Bloomfield Hills?
Because he made the comment, we should look at what rich people do.
Yes.
Oh, you well.
He is good.
Go ahead.
So-
We look at it all
I
the
want to have dinner
time.
with this
Go
guy.
ahead.
So I'm looking at what rich people do. What rich people do, they build systems, protect them so they can be accountable to their tax dollars.
Thank you, Derek.
What rich people too do, they look at innovations and relationships and fold them into the system that exists to ensure that it's accountable to their tax dollars. What rich people do, they hold sacred their franchise so that it's not usurped by an imposing authority like the state of Michigan to undermine the quality of their children. Moral voice, Proverbs 31:8. Who will speak for those who cannot speak
Come
for
on.
themselves?
Speak, Derek.
And so in this context of enforced intentional failure on the city of Detroit children, we have to step back and move away from all of the niceties in the discussion
Yes.
and recognize that our children are being attacked and that we cannot stand by and be quiet because morally, those children they cannot speak for themselves. And so when you have the charter industry creating illusions of hyper success for everybody when only a few people will ever
That's
benefit
right.
from it, I think it's unfortunate and immoral to do that. And so as we travel around the country with this platform and we begin to look at all the opportunities, that's been a common denominator. Rich people don't allow folks to come and usurp their systems and undermine the quality of education for their children.
May I respond?
Go ahead, Clark.
Derek, I think it's also immoral to allow a child who has a parent who is saying, I want something else for my child and I'm not going to wait. I'm not going to wait. When Andy Young and I went into Jackson Prison, when he asked me to go with him to talk to some of the prisoners and talk to them about their children and offer those children the opportunity to be able to have a future different than that parent, uncle, or grandfather, we did it because it was immoral to allow those children to suffer for decisions that they had nothing to do with. Nothing to do with. And so when Andy asked me to do that with him, I said, I'll be there in a nanosecond with you. Because the moral imperative to me is not to let any child not have the opportunity for, with that parent who is the child's first teacher, to find a place to get them in the best possible place. And by the way, that would also mean, in my judgment, there are no boundaries. If a child wants to go to Bloomfield, wants to go to Grosse Pointe, wants to go to these other schools, I say let them. Let them. Well, that's where your moral voice wants to speak. Say there is no boundary for a child to get excellence. So that allows these children to have the future every one of us are talking about.
So
Go ahead.
Right, because I want to get to the reality, but I want you to take a moral walk with me.
I'd love to.
Okay, here's the moral walk. That the same quality and equity that a child will receive in Bloomfield Hills, it is guaranteed for every child in the city of Detroit. That when outside imposing forces come and usurp those opportunities, as opposed to take advantage of the profit motives, that you stand with us and say, this should not happen to any child in this state. That if you understand the inequities that have been intentionally forced upon the children of the city of Detroit, and you see quality outside of the outer rim, that we insist a system, not hodgepodges of opportunity, but a comprehensive system for all children. Because what's happened and what is immoral, if you only give a few, be it 37,000 out of 100 and some thousand kids, what happens to the rest of the children? See, because everyone can't go to your school.
That's right.
And as a result of that, children are being left behind because the system has been broken. I'm not here to protect the system. We started to ensure that all children are provided a quality education. That was the premise of Brown versus Board of Education. And when we pilfer off tax dollars for profit motive, not everybody's doing that, but the way the law is written, it opens it up. So questions of morality cannot be narrow cast to fit someone's concept of what's good or bad. Questions of morality should be opened up. And to see that in a democracy, that we all have a voice, that our franchise should be equally valued, and when someone tries to usurp that, that we stand hand in hand together. And in a democracy, that if quality is provided for one community, we should see quality for all communities.
It's a good conversation.
Take that moral walk
good.
with me.
Clark, did you want to respond to that at all?
Yeah, let's have dinner. I'd love to.
Okay.
I'd
Is
love
there,
to.
is there any other question for Clark? Clark, if you want, do you have copies of your statement?
I do.
Okay. If
I
you could
think
leave
Derek
that with them, we would appreciate it. Thank you, Clark. Clark Durant. We did have Loretta Johnson from the AFT scheduled. I mentioned that she had a death in her family, but we are very delighted to have Ruby Newbolt. Is Ruby still here? Sister Ruby Newbolt, who is Vice President of the American Federation of Teachers. Ruby will be our last speaker, and then we will hear from you in the audience, and then we will be dismissed.
Very good, Reverend Window.
And we're right on time. We're right on time. Thank you, Ruby. Good to see you. Please be seated.
Good seeing you, my friend.
Okay.
My pastor.
Bless your heart.
And I've accepted him as my pastor
Bless you.
in Detroit. I want to thank you for coming to Detroit, and thank you most graciously for coming to my alma mater. I graduated from the big NO, Reverend.
Very good.
And I am here to present the testimony that Dr. Loretta Johnson would have presented to you had she not had a family situation.
Thank you.
She asked me to present this to you. Again, my name is Ruby Newbold. I am a mother of a DPS graduate. I am a grandmother of a DPS CD student, and I am AFT Vice President of the American Federation of Teachers. Again, I'm here on behalf of Loretta Johnson, our Secretary Treasurer. Let me start her testimony by saying charter schools have their place in American education, but they have strayed far from their original intent. As you heard earlier from my sister Ivy Bailey, our former AFT president, L. Shaker, had a vision regarding public charter schools. It was a brilliant idea designed to professionalize teaching and improve learning for kids. Sadly, today, we are witnessing out-of-control expansion with a focus on supplanting, competing, and destroying public education as we know it. Across the country, loosely written laws favor charter schools operators over students, families, and have resulted in fraud, waste, and abuse. And that is just the tip of the iceberg. Many of these schools also engage in discriminatory admission practices that exclude high-need and low-performing students. When charter and voucher schools take money from the regular public schools, it erodes our ability to ensure that strong neighborhood public schools are a substantial option for every child. And that is why Dr. Johnson supports NAACP Board's call for a moratorium on charter school expansion. Here is the truth. Over the past decade, we have seen an expansion of charter schools, but at the same time, we have also seen less transparency, less accountability, more fraud, waste, and abuse. For over 20 years, Dr. Johnson worked in classrooms. And here's what she states. Changing a school's governance structure for a regular public school to a charter school doesn't magically lead to better results.
That's right.
The change actually takes place in the classroom, a sacred place where the joy of teaching and learning actually makes a difference. Our traditional public school system is the only education system that says all kids matter, all kids are accepted, and all kids have a shot at the American dream, no matter their color, creed, or citizenship. On the other hand, at charter schools, not every child who applies gets accepted or can stay.
That's right.
And the only choice parents have is choosing what application to fill out. The application process also requires parental involvement, and there are far too many obstacles for some parents to be involved in the day-to-day lives of our children. And truth be told, most high-performing charters only accept the students likely to succeed.
Right. Right.
Oftentimes, we see evidence of charter schools counseling students out or utilizing harsh discipline policies to suspend and later expel some of our most vulnerable students. And these students end up back in traditional public schools, yet the money stays at the charter school. Dr. Johnson is not against charter schools, and neither is our union. We are just asking for greater accountability and transparency for taxpayers. And while the Trump administration, she made me say that, continues to trumpet school choice, they seem to be missing the forest for the trees. Many of these charters are mirrored in mismanagement, corruption, cronyism, and low student performance. 80% of Michigan charters are for profit, and virtually anyone can open a charter school without the experience necessary to teach kids. The funding that Michigan steers to charter schools has drained resources from traditional public schools, leaving them, as you might have heard, with horribly unsafe and dangerous conditions, lacking the basic resources that students need, like textbooks and the internet. And beyond that, Bessie DeVos was also responsible for pushing a voucher program that was overwhelmingly rejected by the voters in this state. From 2006 to 2016, all state funds for capital improvement, like fixing classrooms and building facilities, went to charter schools, with zero appropriated for public schools. And these are just two examples that tip the iceberg. We also see the same horror stories taking place in Chicago, New York City, Washington, D.C., Los Angeles, and Texas. As I said earlier, we are not opposed to the concept of charter schools. In fact, our union represents charter school teachers in many cities. In Baltimore, all of our charters are unionized. In total, AFT represents teachers in more than 227 charter schools in 16 states, including here in Michigan. We will fight just as hard for these members as we fight for ones that work in traditional public schools. Brothers and sisters, many of us, unlike many of us in this room, many of the people who push charter schools have never attended a public school nor sent their children to public schools.
That's right.
I have done both. Dr. Loretta Johnson has done both. We believe in the power of public education, and we believe that we must work together to reclaim the promise of public education for our children, our grandchildren, and our nation's future. I understand that our time is over. My time is up, but I want to thank you again for coming here to share with us in our community this most important issue at hand.
Thank you, Ruby. Are there any questions? Robin?
Yes, thank you very much. And Dr. Johnson is actually one of my mentors, so I'm from the DC area, DC and Maryland area. I have a couple of questions that I didn't get a chance to ask one of the speakers that came up to speak about charter schools in the system here. But when a child decides school choice and decide a charter school over a public school, and that money goes into the charter school system, right? It follows that child. If that child is expelled from that charter school, does that money go back? How is the money tracked?
The money, once the count is done, the charter school keeps that money.
Right.
The child comes back to, say it comes back to DPS CD. I can't get used to that Sister Meriwether, but DPS CD, we do not get that money.
So there is no accountability or oversight of monies in exchange?
No.
And so does charter schools here, are they required to accept students that have been expelled from public schools? Because if a student is expelled from a public school, he can be reinstated, right? Is that same for charter schools? Are they required? Okay.
It's not the same requirements for charter schools.
Thank you.
There's no accountability there.
They're not going to accept, the charter school is not going to accept a kid with disabilities, and behavior falls in that. They cherry pick. They cherry pick.
So how are charter schools children chosen, selected?
Cherry pick.
What's the?
Hey,
They have a lottery
What's the system?
It's a lottery system.
Hazel, let the witness witness.
What's the system? What's the system of selection for charter school students?
I do not have that answer for you. I could probably get it for you, but I do not have that answer. I do know there's an application process for some charter schools. Now, they will accept the child. They will get the money. By the time the count is over, those kids are either disciplined out and they come back into the traditional schools, and we don't get that money. There is a process for us to request that money, but it's a long process, and whether or not we get it, we don't get all of it back.
Thank you, Ruby.
System at all.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Ruby, if you want, do we have a copy of the statement?
I will provide a copy of Loretta's statement to you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. That concludes the professional presentation. We are going to now, we have a few folk who'd like to make comments. You have 2 minutes. I'm going to ask you to come right here for this filming so you can be filmed. Reverend Maya Lisa Reynolds, Brenda Nimmux, James Hare, Denise Ford, Dr. John Telford, Virgilio Landon, Andrea Craig, Michelle George, James Jeremiah Beasley Jr., Carl Baxter, and Melody Hines, I believe. If you would all come over here to my right and your left. If you heard the order in which I called your names.
And have them restate their name.
Okay, Reverend Reynolds, if you would go.
And have
Reverend Reynolds, then Brenda J. Nimmox, James Hare, Denise Ford, Dr. Telford. I'll get to the others.
Reverend, the stenographer.
Okay.
Spell the name.
A-Y-O-W-A. Reynolds. R-E-Y-N-O-L.
She can't. That mic is not too clear. Spell it real.
I'll spell it for you.
Right.
M-A-Y-O-W-A-L, middle initial Reynolds, R-E-Y-N-O-L-D-S. Reverend Reynolds.
Thank you. I have so much to say, but I've told I'll have 2 minutes, so I'm going to be as succinct as possible. I'm a resident of Detroit, a graduate of Detroit Public Elementary, middle school, and high school, where I actually walked to school. I began school the first year after the revolt here in Detroit, and the district changed in terms of its population. But we still had access to all of the programming that the other residents had, like art, music, science, library, auditorium, and so I received a great education. I'm a local girl, so I have undergraduate and graduate degrees from Mary Grove College. I've raised 5 children, birthed 3, and they've all attended public schools. I started my school experience as a parent at Aisha Shule Affirmative School for Gifted Children. It was a private African-centered school, started from the Council of Independent Black Institutions in one of the first charter schools, but it was already a successful private school. And then my children went on to public schools as I became a teacher. And as I worked in the public school system, I thought it would be important that my children were in public schools, but it was something that we had to navigate. I had to drive my children to all of their schools. They didn't get to walk to school the way I did. So one of the things that I'm most concerned, because my oldest is 27 and my youngest is 16, and she's still a student, she suffered the most under these last 16 years. She attends Renaissance High School, where she had to test to get in, yet last year she had 4 history teachers, and the 10th grade threatened to not have a teacher for geometry. She fortunately has one. Her Spanish class got changed to Arabic when they could not find a Spanish teacher. One of the big issues that we have in Detroit Public Schools is that we have 200 vacancies because it is difficult to recruit and retain highly qualified teachers like myself. But I've stayed here even though my certification is for the state of Michigan. I choose to stay in Detroit. So if we're problem is big, but the answers are simple. We need small classrooms, highly qualified teachers, resources and access to technology, and give our students the best possible chances for them to reach their greatest potential. That is what they deserve, nothing less than that.
Thank you, Reverend Reynolds. Brenda Nimmox.
Good evening.
I'm sorry, B-R-E-N-D-A, middle initial J. Nimmox, N-I-M-O-C-K-S.
Yes, good evening. I currently teach at this school biology. Majority of my students are 9th graders. They have been without a highly qualified teacher for over 2 months. I am a substitute teacher in a vacancy because they could not keep a regular teacher in that position. When I came, I asked for textbooks. I only have 12 textbooks. Over half of the biology textbooks are tore up. So I'm using my own resources out of my own pocket, like many of the dedicated educators for this district we do on a daily basis. I teach the students to obtain careers, not just jobs, because job stands for just over broke. I feel our students across the district should have the opportunity for a quality education. That money that is being spent over a high-priced hockey arena could be invested in our schools and in our classrooms and in our neighborhoods, because we will not succeed in Detroit just concentrating on Midtown downtown and the new center area. It's sad when you walk in a classroom here and you don't even know it's a biology classroom. We don't have the materials, we don't have the resources. I teach the young people to aim higher than just a career as a basketball player. I want to see more investment in our young people. Our young people have to walk in the middle of the street because they're walking past abandoned buildings and houses that are open. We need help. And I'm pleading and I'm appealing to everybody that's listening that can help us. Please help us. This is our future.
Thank you, Ms. Nimitz. We appreciate you. James Hare, James, Hare. Timekeeper's right down front.
I want to thank the committee for coming to Detroit. But one of the things that one of the gentlemen from the charter schools talked about was the number of students who leave the city daily to go to the suburbs, about 27,000. Well, that's not the complete story. Michigan and Detroit is a very unique situation. We have a situation here called emergency management, and we have a state reform district. All of these things were designed by Betsy DeVos, and the end goal was to create an all-charter district like New Orleans, but to do it without the benefit of a bad weather report. Detroit is a $1 billion annual market using the Michigan $10,000 per student allocation. And that's what this is about. We did, some of you, we talked in Orlando, and we gave you some context for the Stanford Credo information, where Stanford claimed that you get 28 days advantage in charter schools and 40 days advantage in math and 28 days in reading. Well, if you take that same Stanford scale and apply it to emergency management in Detroit, the combined negative effect of emergency management on Detroit students is over 100 years. And I'll provide the data to back that up if the committee's interested. Thank you.
We would like that. Thank you, sir. Dr. John Telford, John Telford. Dr. Telford.
Thank you, Reverend Anthony, and I want to commend you, and I want to commend the National NAACP for coming to Detroit. You're kind of like the cavalry coming over the hill. It's a little belated, but we're glad that you've joined with us because we have a major fight on our hands. The state of Michigan is no longer under the rule of law. We've been Jim Crowed in this district pretty badly. I attended this school when it was another school. It was an old school then. It was 1950 and 1951 when I attended, but I'm still wearing my Northwestern hat. I was appointed superintendent of the school district under emergency management when the elected school board really didn't have a lot of power, nor did the superintendent, namely me. But now we have a school board that has some power, and they're going to be doing some good things. The gentleman that you just heard speak, that's Jim Hare, he's got the Quick to Learn program that they have endorsed. And it's research-based, it's field-tested, and it's going to turn Betsy DeVos around. She wants to use Detroit Public Schools as her model for chartering and voucherizing, everything she can in the country. And we're going to stop her right here with that Quick to Learn program. And I commend this new elected board, and one of them was a former board member, Lamar Levins, who's sitting right over there, because we're going to stop Betsy DeVos right in her tracks right here in Detroit. And again, thank you very much.
Thanks, Dr. Telford. I appreciate that. I'm glad you pointed out what what your cap was saying. I thought that was a Make America Great Again hat you
It
had.
says Northwestern alumnus.
I see.
Proud Northwestern alumnus.
I'm scared of people with them red caps on. I mean, I'll be looking out for them. Thank you for that clarification, Doc. I appreciate it. Denise Ford, D-E-N-I-S-E-F-O-R-D.
Hi, I want to first of all thank you for inviting us to this. I'd like to talk real quickly because I had a couple of things to say. First of all, I'm a grandmother of 15. Of the 15 kids, 10 of them went to chartered schools, okay? They are not all bad. This misnomer you're hearing. Parents will go where they can get quality education, to the gates of hell if that's what it takes. We buy our homes based on the education our kids get. Detroit public schools began to fail a long time ago. We ran our children out to the suburbs. We were that type of person because we wanted quality education. We didn't care if the teacher was black, white, orange, or green. We were going where there was quality education. We came back to the city, and then we went into charter schools. My daughter is a teacher in charter school. She was in public school. The teachers in the public school system were so frustrated, overcrowded classrooms, not enough books, that we said there's no way. Just to be saying I'm a Detroiter. Now, of my family, 14 of us graduated from Cass High School, starting in 1924 to 2014. So we believe in it. Of all of those, half were college graduates. So again, we love Detroit Public Schools. Yes, there needs to be a moratorium. Yes, there needs to be accountability over the charter school system. But don't knock all of it, because in my daughter's school, they do have kids who are disabled, kids who, have mentally challenged, and they don't kick them out the door and say don't come back, like some parents might even do. As we read, we had a system where 9 principals took money from the Detroit public schools. Did you see parents out there? Did you see them rallying, throw them out? Nobody said nothing. That's the kind of stuff that the parents in the suburbs, charter school, we won't put up with. Somebody got to make our parents accountable to the Detroit public schools, because it's not a black thing, it's an educational thing.
Thank you, Ms. Ford. We appreciate that. And one of the things that we've done and we think we've tried to do, we've had a variety of speakers. Everybody can have heard that. We've had Democrats, Republicans, and some folk who didn't say what they were. And we also have said that there are good public schools and bad public schools, good charter schools and bad charter schools. This is not an effort to beat down anything. This is to lift up quality education. That's what this is about. And one of the things that we are for and have been for since our inception, particularly with the emphasis of Brown versus the board, is lifting up quality public education for all children. And I would just adjust part of what you said when that occurred with, in the case of some of the folk misusing their responsibilities, and there are a lot of reasons for that. A lot of people spoke up about that. A lot of people, well, you may not have heard it, but that don't mean that folk didn't speak up about it. And corruption is not unique to Detroit. There's enough corruption for everybody to get a little piece, amen?
Reverend, 1 minute,
please.
please.
Yes, so I just want to articulate that.
Everywhere I go,
yes,
I tell parents, grandparents, anybody who's the guardian of your children, you have a right.
That's right.
NAACP will never take that right from a parent. You are the guardian of your grandchildren and your children. You have the right to choose where your children go to school. So I want you to know, NAACP, this panel is not about where you send your child to school. It's about quality. And if your children are receiving quality at the charter school, that's where you should have your children at.
And that's exactly correct. But at the same time, we also have a duty to point out when there is incorrect information related to what's happening within our community and beyond. We want to share. We believe that there's enough hell burning for everybody to get a bucket and decide what Friday night put out. Mr. Rogelio Landon, spell R-O-G-E-L-I-O-L-A-N-D-I-N. Mr. Rogelio.
Reverend Anthony, good
Yes, sir.
evening. Task Force for Quality Education, welcome and thank you. Mr. Johnson, clearly you went to Western. On behalf of Southwest Detroit, I make you an honorary Hispanic, brother. Let me just say, the two issues, as I understood it, for your purpose on being on this national tour, was the issue of adequate funding, and the other, obviously, on the moratorium of charters. With regard to adequate funding, I think we will agree that we find ourselves mired in mediocrity in the pursuit of adequacy in an environment that demands excellence. Those with the least need the most.
Right.
Excellence and equity cannot be achieved with adequacy. Bradley v. Milliken is a leg that I think we can stand on and part of the NAACP legacy here. As a filer of an amicus in that case, I was there with the NAA. We go back to that. We have done things together. We can do things together, and we can contribute to this process. What I would like to say is that the most important thing about Bradley v. Milliken were the remedies, and in 100 reports over the last 10 years, they still form the cornerstone of everything that's recommended and needed for student success. It's worth revisiting, it's worth standing on, and it's worth using. It's already been upheld in the circuit courts. It has federal support. I think we haven't utilized it to its fullest extent. Let me encourage you to revisit that. Beyond that, there are still 30 districts with open desegregation orders in the United States. One of those, the largest being Los Angeles, having been open for the last 40 years. There's a lot more I'd like to say. I'm running out of time. My point is this: charters have manifested themselves in several iterations of segregation. That needs to be visited, if for no other reason. We still haven't gotten segregation right. It's still open. The courts are still open. Let the NAACP do what it does best: represent our children in the courts. Let's fight the fight. You have a partner. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Andrea Craig, Andrea Craig. Ms. Craig.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I am a product of Detroit Public Schools, Central High School.
Amen, amen, amen,
One
amen.
daughter that graduated K-12 and another that went K-8 and then went to private school. I'm also a retiree of Detroit Public Schools. I'm presently a counselor, district coordinator for a charter school, and I wanted to address several areas very quickly. First of all, we are under scrutiny. We stand up to the same standards in terms of testing. I have in my hands a report on Michigan high schools, and this is both charter and the public schools, and it takes into account the socioeconomic impact and the test results, and it covers a 4-year span so you can get a trend going on. I wanted to speak directly to, we are looked at on the same levels in terms of test scores, the socioeconomic. Yes, you may have some applications, but also we do have special needs kids and we do service them. The state of Michigan dictates what happens to an expelled student, and they can't go to any other school, whether it's charter or public. Certain schools that keep getting recognition, like Cass and Renaissance, you have to test into those schools, and they will ask you to go back to your local school if you do not stand up to the standards. We keep our kids and we work with them and we give them support, and they graduate. Our students earned over $15.8 million last year in scholarships. They are in HBCUs, they are all over the country, and they are doing well. I think that you paint a broad brush when you continue to lump and want a moratorium. Please don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. We have good schools, we have bad schools. Yes, maybe we need some oversight, totally, maybe so. I'm not on that end of it. I'm on the ground floor working it. But you do need to not throw out the baby with the bathwater. We have excellent schools on both sides.
Thank you, Ms. Craig. Michelle George.
Thank you, Dr. Anthony, and to the board. My name is Michelle George. I am a graduate.
I'm sorry, Michelle.
Yes.
Michellgeorge. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I am a graduate of Murray Wright High School. I am an advanced practice registered nurse. I have a master's in nursing from Wayne State University. And Murray Wright High School was very instrumental in me getting my RN degree. We need, and I've been hearing what everyone is saying, we do need these quality programs. I also mentor at-risk youth at the Covenant House, homeless youth. And when they see nurses speak, sometimes the kids are in awe. Nurse George, I want to be a nurse. We need the future. I was glad to see these young men speaking because that lets me know what we're fighting for. I'm also a member of National Action Network and also Keep the Vote, No Takeover. Dr. Padroni and State Representative Sherry Ganego said it best. What we're seeing here, and I heard the gentleman up on the board, you're right, every once a month there is a Detroit Review Board. They're running the show. The governor is running the show. Recently, in November of 2016, there was an article in the paper that stated, the state says literacy is not a right in Detroit. That article was written 2 months ago. That lets you know the evil that we're fighting. And when I spoke in front of the Detroit Review Board, the governor's people that is running the show, I mentioned that we don't see an article that says state is not a right in Livonia. We don't see that state literacy is not a right in Bloomfield Hills. We're talking about the school to prison pipeline that we're trying to avoid. There was a school, Davis Aerospace Technical High School, that was in the U.S. reports today that was dismantled by emergency management. These young people were getting they lost the FAA license, they lost the airframe, power plant, and Colonel Milvin is not here. We're still fighting that today. When I went to the Congressional Black Caucus, we reached out to Congressman Conyers, we're reaching out to Congressman Clyburn. The School of the Deaf was dismantled. Also, Oakman Orthopedic Schools was dismantled. That lets you know the evil that we're fighting. And that school debt of the old board, I fought with the old board because that was dismantled. I recognize the DPS board, but we had another board that was dismantled. But I just want to say that we're trying to fight that with the schools to get this back. And they had Detroit Tuskegee Airmen that was in the school district. So I want to say we're fighting, we're continuing to fight, and we need more nurses, senators, and congressmen on board. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. James Jeremiah Beasley Jr., J-A-M-E-S, middle initial J, Beasley, B-E-A-S-L-E-Y, Jr. Mr. Beasley.
All right. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for the task force for coming here. My name is James Beasley, Jr. I'm a graduate of Detroit Northwestern High School, proud alumnus of Northwestern, produced Michael Eric Dyson, Dr. John Conyers, so Damon Keith. So Northwestern has done what Northwestern has done down throughout the years. We need to take a look at the devastation educationally that has occurred in Detroit under state ownership. Since 2008, the Council of Great City Schools did a report on Detroit. Third grade reading in 2008 was 92% proficient or advanced, 8% non-proficient. 2016, under the state MSTEP program, those numbers are reversed, is 92% non-proficient, 92% non-proficient, and 8% proficient. Third grade reading. Michelle Alexander, in her book, The New Jim Crow, equates third grade reading to the jail rate. What do you think we're producing here in Detroit? We have an ability to turn things around. You heard from Mr. Hare. He has a program which is tested, a 20-year program called Quick to Learn, focusing on 0 percentile priority schools, turning them around in 1 school year. We have this before the new school board. We're hoping we can get community support to let our kids know that they're worth the investment, to put the right products, to put blended learning, to put extended learning so that they can use the 21st century techniques to continue to learn is what we have to do. We cannot sit on the sidelines and not educate our kids. And the assault on the charter school, on public schools, is an assault on the black middle class. If you think of all the jobs that are associated with it, we have to look at this as an economic and an educational issue, and we need to support the development that's going on here in Detroit and allow us to have access to our school system.
Thank you, Mr. Beasley. Mr. Carl Baxter, C-A-R-L, middle initial W, B-A-X-T-E-R, Baxter. Mr. Baxter.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming, and I definitely thank you for bringing up the discussion that's happening across this country. It's not just Detroit, it's not just Michigan. Public education has been under attack in this country, and it's been under attack for a while. It's about funding. It's about the dollars that are attached to our children. It's not about schools of choice. That's a misnomer that's been given to us as parents. I'm a parent of 2 DPS graduates. I'm a parent of 2 DPS students that are in kindergarten. Same mother. I'm gonna say that, same mother. But, you know, Mr. Johnson pointed out something that when he was talking to the founder of Cornerstone, that he made a statement of bringing in professionals so that students would have an opportunity to seek employment. I remember when there was a thing called student co-op, where that same thing happened. I actually graduated from Cass Tech, went straight from Cass Tech into Michigan Bell, where I spent 31 years working for them. And I decided to leave because I wanted to do something different. I wanted to help be a spokesperson for my community. I wanted to help fight with my children for quality education. So we got to stop fighting separately. There are a lot of social ills that are being pressed upon us. Dr. King said it best, that we can't separate those social ills. We have to fight as one. We have to fight them all together. The NAACP can't do it by themselves. We have to join together with the SCLC. We have to join together with the APRI. We all have to take one of those ills and fight it as one voice. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Baxter. We appreciate all your comments. You know you was being recorded when you made all them comments. You know that, don't you? About, well, you know what you said, amen. Is Melody Hines here? Melody Hines? Okay. Brother Wayne Bradley Jr.
Thank you, Reverend Anthony, and thank you for the NAACP. The thing I've been hearing a lot.
Oh, I'm sorry. WAYNEBRADLEY.
No junior. He'll kill me.
Okay.
All right, so basically when I'm listening to all the things we're talking about today, I hear the complaints, and we're putting a lot of issues on the state. I've been hearing a lot about Betsy DeVos, who pretty much has spent her whole life trying to help education, regardless of how people might feel about it. She spent a lot of time, a lot of commitment to that. I really don't believe that anything can be improved with choice, with competition. The only thing we don't have that doesn't have competition is public schools. And so I'm kind of like where Clark Durant is at. We need more options. And we need more to do to help our parents, because it doesn't matter if you live in, like you said, West Bloomfield. If the parents are not involved, the kids are not going to perform well. And the other thing that you brought up about what rich people do, and I'm not trying to call out, you're right, rich people do different things. We all need to vote and hold our elected officials accountable, because it didn't happen all by itself. The state didn't just wake up one morning and decide to take over Detroit, okay? And so that's my point. It didn't happen overnight.
Don't slay the messenger.
I'm used to that. You know
I know you are. I know you are.
Like I said, I've been here again. We all owe more to having more choices to all parents, and let parents decide. If you don't like the school your kid is in, take them somewhere else. You made the argument that you're taking away from somebody else's kid. It's per head, per dollar.
No. No. Come on, Mr. Bradley, make your
testimony. We all win with more options, and everything gets better with competition, including public schools. Peace.
Good.
Thank you, Mr. Bradley. We appreciate you. And since you are close to many of those people that folk talked about, like Betsy DeVos and all of those, we know you're going to carry the message back to public education for everybody. Everybody has an opportunity.
Support as well. I would definitely do that.
So we appreciate you. Let's give all of our presenters and those comments a big hand. I want to ask Alice Huffman if she would come and make some closing remarks, and then following that I will close out and we will be finished for this evening. Alice?
Let's give Reverend Wendell a hand here. Whoa.
Not only Reverend Wendell, let's give Detroit a hand here.
Yay.
I just, in closing, I know it's been a long day. I just want to thank you all. I do want to make a couple comments. Education was founded to create a better nation. At the time it was founded, it didn't include us. We were probably slaves. They didn't design it for us, and it was okay then. It only didn't get okay after Brown v. Board. And a lot of the things we're discussing today stem from racism, separatism, segregation, and we got all these configurations now for school choice and alternatives and so forth. But I want you to remember the history. If public schools were good enough for white folks before we were able to get Brown v. Board passed, it's good enough for black folks after we get it passed. And I want you also to remember that we can all have people who are trying to help us, but all help is not good help. And all help is not for us, it's for something else. And I know that I'm supposed to be impartial, but I'm just going to show my colors today. All of this is about breaking up the monopoly on the education budget. Most folks don't give a hoot about our kids, and you had choice before we had all this stuff going on with charter schools. If you want to send your kid to a private school, you could do it. We had choice forever in America, so this is not new. I hope that we can stay the course. Don't get distracted. Look at transparency. Look at accountability. Look at the taxpayer's dollar. Parents, you who want to send your kids somewhere, send them someplace. But those of us who want all kids educated equally, we should fight to maintain quality public education. That's where we're coming from. So if you want to go and send your kid across town to another school, by all means, that's your choice. But the NAACP is standing for all kids, regardless of whether their parents can't stand for them, whether or not their grandparents can't stand for them, and whether or not the school district doesn't stand for them. We're going to stand for them, and we're going to fight for them. Thank you.
That's right. Quality education.
Thank you, Alice. We appreciate you all staying with us for this hearing, and please know that those people who presented over here, if you would like to submit something to us in writing about your comments, please do that. Get them to the Detroit branch as soon as you can, and we need them by Tuesday. Also, we want to acknowledge everyone. Want to thank the Northwestern High School for hosting us here. We're going to thank UAW Ford, Brother Settles, and Michigan State Conference, National Board members, and the audiovisual staff, and everybody that was here. And please note that, you know, what Alice says is this is a very important issue for us because, you know, as African Americans and folk who've come up and created public education for all folk, black folk and poor white folks, we did not come over here as immigrants. We came over in the bottom of slave ships. In case some people forget that, we did. That's how we got here, but we've made the best of it. And HBCUs were not the first schools of choice. We did not have a choice, but we had the choice was freedom and educational equity and dignity and respect. That's why Howard and Morehouse and Talladega and Fisk and all those schools were created. In case you don't know, ask somebody. But we're simply glad that you stayed with us. Give yourselves a big hand, Detroit and everywhere else. Thank you so very much. God bless you. And as Malcolm said, education is the passport to the future. Let's give our children a passport to a great future. Thank you very much.